Well, most people, when they think about bone health, they might think, oh, I need to make sure I get enough calcium. But one of the biggest hidden drivers of bone health is actually stress. When stress becomes chronic, it raises a hormone called cortisol, and elevated cortisol can quietly accelerate bone breakdown. And I'm sure you've heard about cortisol in relationship to belly fat, to cravings, to insomnia, to the adrenals, maybe even the thyroid. And that is all true. It also has an impact on our bones. Today, I want to explain how cortisol affects your bones and what you can do to support your bones during stressful times. And remember, cortisol is a hormone and it's part of a whole hormone team. I call it your own personal team of first responders. And this team, we got to look at all the different hormones and support them through our daily habits, through our foods. And that's what I'm all about as a board certified holistic nutritionist and Ayurvedic educator, Mary Sheila here. And for nearly 2 decades, I've been helping my clients and my students understand how hormones, nutrition, and daily rhythms influence long-term health. When we talk about bone health, we often focus on minerals like calcium and vitamin D, but bones are living tissue. They are constantly breaking down and rebuilding. In fact, think about your bone marrow. That's the birthplace of your immune cells, right? So they are very dynamic. And hormones play a huge role in determining whether your bones are in a building state or a breakdown state. One hormone that strongly influences this process is cortisol. Now, cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. It's produced by the adrenal glands and it helps your body respond to challenges, especially stressful ones, or challenges your body perceives as stressful. So sometimes even staying up way too late and catching that second wind, the adrenals are like, okay, I'm here to help, right? Or skipping a meal and getting really hungry and having low blood sugar and then, maybe eating a bunch of carbs, right? All those highs and swings and lows, cortisol is like, okay, I'm here to help, right? So we could have these bursts of cortisol just helping to, navigate certain choices that we make. And short bursts of cortisol are actually helpful and even part of our circadian rhythm. Cortisol from the adrenals help you wake up in the morning, respond, right? When you wake up in the morning, you have cortisol. It's almost like you have units of energy. Cortisol also helps you respond to danger, mobilizes energy. In fact, the adrenals release cortisol in a daily rhythm that helps us to have energy to get up and go. But when stress becomes chronic, right, when we're burning the candle at both ends, cortisol can remain elevated longer than the body was designed for. And that's where problems begin to show up. When cortisol stays elevated for long periods of time, several things can happen. First of all, cortisol, when it's just raised and kind of unopposed, can increase bone breakdown. It puts us in a more catabolic state, which starts to happen anyways as we age, but then cortisol can even accelerate that quicker. Second, it can reduce calcium absorption in the gut. And that's because when we are chronically stressed, we're not in that rest and digest parasympathetic mode, and we don't have as many digestive juices. Our body's more on alert versus more really focused on digestion. And third, it shifts the body into a more catabolic state, meaning the body prioritizes survival over rebuilding tissues. Bones, muscles, and connective tissue can all be affected. Over time, this can contribute to weaker bones and slower bone repair. When our hormones begin to fluctuate in midlife, people often notice higher stress levels. There can be multiple reasons for this, right? Hormonal changes during perimenopause, like it just naturally, when all those fluctuate, cortisol is like, whoa, what's going on here, right? It might affect our sleep. It might affect blood sugar swings. Maybe we're not paying attention to making sure we're balancing our blood sugar. Maybe we have more stress because we have more caregiving responsibilities. Maybe you're still caring for kids. Maybe, the kids are still going through stuff. Maybe your parents or grandparents, right? And just work-life demands. Like there can be a lot of stressful things happening in midlife because it's really like a power time of our lives. There's a lot going on, right? We're sort of in our prime. We're, working, raising people, perhaps. So it can be challenging. And when sleep becomes disrupted and blood sugar fluctuates throughout the day, cortisol can rise even further. And this creates a cycle that can affect mood, energy, and bone health. But when it comes to cortisol, the good news is that there are several ways to help regulate cortisol naturally. And I'm going to talk about 2 powerful strategies. And these are things to think about and incorporate in your life, and not necessarily these heroic things, but these rhythmic things that we can do. And the first is to prioritize consistent sleep. Sleep is when the body repairs tissue, when bones grow and brain cleanses. It regulates our hormones and restores balance in the whole hormonal system. So we want to aim for that 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night that can support healthy cortisol rhythms. And here's the thing, going to bed earlier can make the biggest difference, especially during hormonal shifts of midlife. In Ayurveda and circadian biology, early sleep supports the body's natural hormone cycles. And I know a lot of people that I work with, when I find out what time they go to bed, I'm like, So getting a good night's sleep is going to be key, and doing it earlier in the night is also going to be key. A lot of times people say, well, what if I go to bed at like midnight and sleep until 9? And I say, well, you can do whatever you want, but there's more healing and repair from the hormonal system and rebuilding all of that earlier in the evening, more human growth hormone earlier to help repair and grow muscle and bone and all of that. So it really is better to get into a different rhythm and sleep at night and be awake in the day. And, sunrise is actually pretty magical. Just saying. Okay, the next thing that you can do, and again, it kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but I know I'm talking to some of you, is that you want to incorporate daily stress regulation. And this doesn't have to be complicated. Simple practices can make a huge difference. Like take a walk outside, do some deep breathing, meditation, right? Sometimes we just have to say, okay, I need to step away and stop and take a break and do some deep breathing, go for a walk, call a friend, soak your feet, you know what I mean? Like we can just be in this go, 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 and we forget to do certain things. It can also mean gentle yoga. It could also mean when you are actually taking a break, like eating a meal, you're sitting down, you're taking a few breaths, you're enjoying your meal, you're getting into that parasympathetic rest and digest, you're putting your screen away, and you're just really in gratitude and eating. That can be huge. So taking the time to slow down signals safety to the nervous system. And when the nervous system feels safe, the body can shift from breakdown mode into repair mode. So again, cortisol is just one of several hormones that influence bone strength as we age. In fact, there are 5 key hormones that determine whether bones become stronger or weaker over time. And I've created a free guide called The 5 Hormones That Influence Bone Strength After 40 and what you can do. And this explains these hormones and practical steps like the ones I shared today you can take to support your bones through nutrition, movement, and daily habits. You can download the guide below. And if you found this helpful, subscribe because I'll be sharing the other hormones in upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.